All right, welcome back everyone. My name is Pratesh here with Kaizen Crypto, bringing you another video. So here today I've got quite an information-packed episode for you. We're going to be talking about some parameters that have just been recently announced from IOHK. This is going to be relevant information if you are interested in operating a stake pool, or even if you're interested in delegating to a stake pool when we see staking available for Shelley on mainnet. So if you guys are interested in this type of content, if you do find some value from this video here today, please be sure to drop a like for me. If you guys have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Click that notification bell also so you know when I post a new video. And if you do have any comments or concerns about anything that we're talking about here today, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. So to start things off here with this video, I've got an article pulled up. This is from Lars Brunez of IOHK, talking about some of the reasoning and methodology behind the parameters that were chosen and some of the thought processes behind why they did that. So to take a look at this article here, I'm going to briefly read some key points. I know in my previous videos, quite a bit of information there, so I read it word for word. And I feel like some of you guys like that style, and some of you guys like it when I talk about some of the points and then continue reading. So I'm going to give that a shot here in this video. We're going to briefly go through some key points. I'm going to share with you guys my thoughts, and we will continue from there. So to get started, setting solid parameter values while maintaining flexibility for the future will be key to the growth and ongoing decentralization of Cardano. After consulting with the community and working closely with my colleagues Kevin Hammond and Alex Appledorn, we believe we've identified a good place to start. The behavior of Cardano Shelley is controlled by about 20 parameters, and values have to be set for all of those before we launch the mainnet. Most of these parameters are technical in nature, so while setting them up correctly, it's important to guarantee the safety and optimized performance of the system. Their particular values do not have a significant influence on user experience. Some parameters are different though. They determine the level of centralization and sustainability of the Cardano ecosystem. They also drive the economics of delegation and of operating a stake pool. Choosing good values for these is exceedingly complicated because we have to carefully balance a number of important considerations: security, performance, stability, sustainability, decentralization, fairness, and economic viability. With all parameters on the Cardano blockchain, we have three distinct goals to keep in mind. Namely, we want to be truly decentralized so that no one party can threaten the integrity of the chain. We want the stake pool operators to be incentivized to keep supporting our chain. And we do not want these incentives to significantly change at any singular point in time in a way that might negatively affect the stability of the operator's income. We want to give equal opportunity to everyone who wants to participate in Cardano and run a stake pool. However, parameter values that might seem fair and reasonable for smaller pools can become challenging for larger pools and vice versa. For example, large pools could find it easy to put down a higher pledge than small pools can afford. Small pools, on the other hand, might be able to operate with far lower costs than larger pools. We also consider it imprudent to change parameters too frequently because this might negatively affect the stability and predictability of the operator's income. Taking this all under consideration, we came up with some recommendations for initial choices of parameter values, which we will outline here. However, we do not want to stop there. With decentralization comes democracy. Our community must have a say in how the chain is governed. For this reason, we will run with these numbers initially and issue a Cardano improvement proposal where the community can vote on optimal chain parameters. In the end, the governance of Cardano will be in the hands of the Cardano community, who we feel confident are the best people to advise us. So essentially what they're doing, being that we are now seeing these parameters available to the stake pool operators, they're going to have these numbers set based on their best calculations of what these parameters should be as we see these implemented onto the mainnet. Now, with this Cardano improvement proposal, you'll often hear it referred to as a CIP for short. And what they're intending on doing there is using this data that we are going to gather with these parameters when we see that on mainnet and determine whether or not we need to adjust any of those parameters in due time. So now what they were explaining was that they don't want to frequently change these parameters. So they want to have a really good idea and understanding of what they should be right out the gate. So I think we're going to see a fair amount of accuracy with these numbers. After all, I mean, this has been proposed by mathematicians and chief scientists and academics. So there's been a fair amount of thought and research involved into figuring out these numbers. But in the instance that we do see that these parameters need to change as we experience network architecture changes, whether that's the number of stake pools coming online, whether that's the value of ADA appreciating to make the pledge amounts have to change, something like that, just to give you an idea, we're going to have a way to be able to implement those changes on chain. Now, the biggest challenge I think we'll face with this is that Cardano will be truly decentralized. And what we're experiencing right now with the vote to continue the rewards for the ITN, we're experiencing Cardano's first truly democratic vote. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to this. There's been quite a bit of thought that's been going on from stake pool operators to figure out what these parameters should be. So let's take a look further and figure out what exactly we're talking about when it comes to these parameters. So first and foremost will be the desired numbers of stake pools. So the desired number of stake pools, or K, is an important parameter. Cardano incentives have been designed to encourage an equilibrium with K fully saturated pools, which means that rewards will be optimal for everybody when all stake is delegated uniformly to the K most attractive pools. The higher K value chosen, the more decentralized the system becomes, but a higher K also leads to a less efficient system. Namely, it would be higher costs and more energy consumption, and lower rewards for both delegators and stake pool owners. Based on what we have learned from both the incentivized testnet and the Haskell-Shelley testnet, we know that our community is highly motivated to set up pools and support the chain, with hundreds within a matter of weeks being set up. So now this tells us that some measure of decentralization can and will happen relatively quickly. But decentralization alone is not enough. Cardano needs a long-term commitment from its operators, and conversely, operators need to be sufficiently incentivized to keep supporting the system. To strike a balance between decentralization and these incentives for stake pool operators, we're proposing an initial K equals 150, and then to gradually increase the value. We believe this will ensure that the system is stable and efficient in the beginning, and can gradually grow over time to become more decentralized and even more secure later on. And we can see this here in an outline. They've got the K value increasing over time gradually. And it's going to be interesting because we will see over time more and more stake pool operators becoming active on the network. So the number of 150 stake pools of roughly equal size makes Cardano an order of magnitude more decentralized than any other blockchain. And this is only the beginning. There is no reason why there could not be thousands of stake pools in the future. Next parameter we're going to be talking about is monetary expansion. So staking rewards for both delegators and stake pool operators are taken from two sources, namely transaction fees and monetary expansion. Specifically, every epoch, all the transaction fees from every transaction from all blocks produced during that epoch are put into a virtual pot. And additionally, a fixed percentage, or P, of the remaining ADA reserves is added to that pot. Then a certain percentage, T, of the pot is sent to the Treasury. The rest is used as epoch rewards. This mechanism ensures that in the beginning, when the number of transactions is still relatively low, because users are just starting to build their business on Cardano, the portion of rewards taken from the reserves is high. This provides a great incentive for early adopters to move quickly and benefit from high initial rewards. Over time, as transaction volumes increase, the additional fees compensate for dwindling reserves. This mechanism also ensures that available rewards are predictable and change gradually. There will be no sudden jumps comparable to Bitcoin halving events every 4 years. Instead, the fixed percentage taken from remaining reserves every epoch guarantees a smooth exponential decline. So what value should P have, and how much should go to the Treasury? This is again a trade-off. Higher values of P mean higher rewards for everybody initially, and a Treasury that fills faster. But higher values of P also means faster reserve depletion. It is certainly important, especially in the beginning, to pay high rewards and incentivize early adopters, but it is also important to provide a long-term perspective for all stakeholders. As explained above, Cardano will never run out of reserves. Look instead at an exponential decay. To get a feeling for the impact of specific value of P, one can calculate the reserve half-life, the time it takes for half of the reserves to have been used up. After much deliberation, we arrived at a suggestion of 0.22% for the value of P. When you crunch the numbers, you get around 4 to 5 years as reserve half-life for this. In other words, every 4 to 5 years, half of the remaining reserves will be used. This is close to the Bitcoin half-life of circa 4 years, so Cardano reserves will deplete at about the same rate as Bitcoin reserves. It is worth noting that it took Bitcoin around 8 years to reach its peak of maximum adoption and price. We therefore feel it makes sense to expect Cardano transaction volume and exchange rate to increase sufficiently over the next 8 years to more than make up for the decrease of monetary expansion during that time. Okay, lots to talk about there. Very cool. As we can see, so what they're intending on doing in order to pay these rewards after every epoch. So you have the transaction fees and you have the monetary inflation that's built into the protocol. Now, in order to incentivize these people who are going to be coming onto the network over time, of course, we see the tremendous amount of interest initially right out the gate with the amount of stake pool operators that are currently running on the Haskell-Shelley testnet. Gradually over time, as we increase the amount of stake pool operators coming onto the network, the rewards will be paid out more frequently with the transaction fees. And then we'll see the reserves that are held by the Treasury gradually decreasing over time. So it is an inflationary mechanism to a certain extent. However, with the amount of rewards being consistently distributed over years and decades, we're going to see that the reserves are going to be decreasing, like we saw in the article here, gradually, pretty similar to the rate of Bitcoin in terms of a half-life of about 4 to 5 years. Now, it's not going to be a gradual, it's not going to be a sudden event like we experienced with the Bitcoin halving, where I think it was in May, like middle of May, we had a Bitcoin halving where the reward issuance for mining a Bitcoin block was cut from 12.5 to 6.25. In this instance, what we're going to see is a gradual decline over that same time period. So very interesting, lots of interesting implementations as it comes to monetary policy. Moving on, let's take a look at from reserves to Treasury. So we're also proposing an initial value of 5% for T. Now these are the percentage of rewards automatically going to the Treasury after every epoch. This means that at least 380 million ADA will be sent from the reserves to the Treasury over the next 5 years. However, the real amount going to the Treasury will be significantly higher. First of all, again, take learnings from the ITN, but also predicting the use of ADA in the future. It's unreasonable to assume that all ADA will be delegated. Some of it will be locked up in exchanges, be transacted and used in various smart contracts. The ADA that is not being delegated will produce unclaimed rewards. Those unclaimed rewards also go to the Treasury, which will bump the amount to around about 1.9 billion ADA. Secondly, we do not expect the pledge of most pools to be particularly high, just high enough to make it unattractive to launch a Sybil attack. The difference between potential pool rewards with a very high pledge and pools with the more realistic pledge level we expect goes to the Treasury as well and will add an additional 1 billion ADA over the first 5 years. The sum of all the ADA flowing to the Treasury means that there will be sufficient funds to pay for new, exciting features and extensions for the foreseeable future. So essentially with that little excerpt, they were talking about future funding for different types of improvements and on-chain features that we're going to see over time with Cardano. So that's talking about the Treasury and how it intends to be funded with these different implementations. Now, pledge influence factor and minimum operational cost settings. So ADA that is pledged by pool owners provides essential protection against Sybil attacks by ensuring that delegated stake is not excessively attracted to pools whose owners try to attack the system by creating a large number of pools without themselves owning a lot of stake. So the author is saying that himself, Kevin Hammond, and Duncan Coutts covered this in some detail recently on the Cardano Effect podcast. The pledge influence factor directly affects the rewards that a pool earns. The higher the influence factor, the more of a difference a higher pledge makes on rewards. A higher influence factor increases the level of Sybil protection and makes the system safer and more secure. But it also gives an advantage to stake pool owners that can afford a higher pledge. Higher pledge can be used to compensate for higher operational costs, meaning that a pool with relatively high costs can maintain suitable rewards and remain attractive to delegators by increasing its pledge. We have tested a variety of pledge influence factors under various real-world conditions, about 1 million simulations in all. The influence factor can range between 0 and infinity. Our chosen initial setting of a 0.3 is designed to balance the level of Sybil protection against the required pledge. There is no minimal pledge though. Pool operators can set the pledge as low or as high as they like. Rewards are influenced by their choice, but there is no hard rule forcing them to pledge a specific amount. This means that ultimately, pool pledges will be as high as pool owners are willing to make them, and it will be up to our community to find a sweet spot between protection against attacks, economic considerations, and the desire for fairness and equal opportunity. The minimum operational cost setting ensures that the pledge influence factor is effective. By avoiding a race to the bottom where pool owners claim excessively low operating costs in order to gain a competitive advantage. While this might benefit ADA stakeholders in the short term, the long-term effect would be to risk the health of the Cardano network by disincentivizing professional pool operation. And we can see here there's a graph I think does a nice job of being able to visualize the operating costs per year. Very cool. You've got the probability on the y-axis and you got the operating cost per year on the x-axis. So, and what they were doing with this is trying to find an optimal pledge for the stake pool operators. Lots of things to consider there. If we see that the value of ADA increases tremendously, like how is that going to affect new stake pool operators? So distribution of typical pool operating costs per pool per year obtained from a survey of experienced pool operators in May 2020 is outlined here in this graphic. Genuine low-cost operators can greatly benefit from the minimum operational cost because the difference between the minimal cost and their actual cost provides them with additional income on top of their margin and their staking rewards. Our research shows that typical operating costs are expected to be in the $2,000 to $15,000 range per pool per year, as shown in the diagram above. We have therefore chosen a setting of $2,000 for the minimum operational cost. And then next we can see a graphic of the average expected return on investment. And we can see the x-axis, we have sample numbers, and typically it's just increasing subset of values going through time. And then on the y-axis, we have an average ROI. So the estimated range of average return on investment for stake pools, assuming a monetary expansion rate of 0.22% per epoch. And then finally, we calculated the expected returns for stake pools under a range of different real-world scenarios, about 150,000 pools in total. We used the settings for the influence factor, monetary expansion, and minimum costs that were given above and varied the targeted number of pools between 150 and 500. Our results show that given the distribution of costs that we showed in the diagram above, stake pools will achieve sustainable ROIs of between 6 and 6.5% on average, using today's ADA to dollar conversion rate. The ROIs would of course be better if the value of ADA were to appreciate. All right, so this is talking about the feasibility in terms of return on investment for these stake pool operators. So lots of things to look at here. I'm going to be leaving the link to this article down in the description below if you do want to check it out. I think that if you're able to have this in the back of your mind, if you are considering operating a stake pool, or even if you're interested in delegating to a stake pool, this will give you a better understanding of some of the business aspects behind running this long term. Now, in conclusion, choosing good values for all Cardano Shelley parameters is a hard and complicated endeavor, because lots of concerns have to be balanced. Security, efficiency, stability of the system on the one hand, versus economic viability for stake pool operators and delegators, and long-term sustainability of the ecosystem on the other hand. No other blockchain has ever done what we are going to do. We are charting new territory with every step and moving out at the cutting edge of science and technology. So we can't rely on existing data and statistics or past experience, but have to use educated guesses and mathematical models, which can never be perfect more often than not. We did our best to come up with a reasonable proposal, but we know it will have to be improved upon over time. The values proposed here are just a start, and we will closely work with our community to refine and adjust them over the coming months and years. Very cool. Lots of information here, guys. I hope you did enjoy a little bit of input as we went through that article. I want to make sure that I can make these videos engaging and exciting while still providing all the relevant information that you need. So my thoughts on this, so we've got a much better understanding of what the network will be expecting with these parameters. Of course, some things to note are that over time, we are gradually going to see an increase in the amount of stake pool operators helping to run the network. So as far as how this is going to affect things such as ROI or the pledge, it's still open for discussion. I would like to say, if you guys are interested in joining us for a conversation, I'm going to be talking with Big Pay. If you guys have not checked out Big Pay's channel, check him out. His stake pool is Pay80A. And we're going to be having a discussion talking about some of these parameters. If you guys do have any questions about some things that we can potentially discuss in that, go ahead and let me know down in the comments section below. If you guys are interested in joining us for that video, we will be posting it most likely around Monday of next week, or if not Tuesday. And it's going to be a great discussion. So you guys definitely want to make sure you join us for that. Lots of interesting things to talk about. So those are some things to look forward to, and I wanted to go ahead and briefly touch on this as well. This is an update for the incentivized testnet. Charles Hoskinson is going to be publishing a whiteboard video coming up very soon, hopefully giving us some more information as far as stake pool operators running on the ITN about how it's going to look as far as being able to vote for the continuation of rewards and whether or not the ITN will be voted on to continue running after the launch of Shelley. So just a couple key points. If you are a stake pool operator, this is relevant to you if you are currently operating on the ITN. So first of all, from tomorrow, the 25th of June, between epochs 195 and 198, we are inviting our existing ITN stake pool operators to vote to confirm that they wish to see the continuation of an incentivized testnet network. Everyone gets to reclaim what they have already earned once we have mainnet Shelley. This is just about a potential extra month. So any new rewards would be payable from epochs 199. The date of the vote results will be known, and the reward pots increased by 95 million test ADA if the proposal receives a majority of yes. The first vote is open to anyone with a testnet ADA stake on the ITN. We will encourage every stake pool to have their say at this point. ADA holders are not required to vote in this first vote. This is purely optional. Their say will come later on in July, and we're going to be talking about that here in just a moment. And for this to happen, what needs to take place is that the stake pool operators will need to upgrade their version of Jormungandr to the latest version, 0.9.0, so that we can form a majority of nodes, and then we can begin the voting mechanism. So now currently they're working on a simple app, and they hope to release that through their testnet website. Otherwise, if not, the voting for this will take place via the command line interface. So those are some things to be expected. Stake pool operators running on the incentivized testnet will be voting for the continuation of rewards up until the hard fork for Shelley mainnet. After we see Shelley mainnet, we will be given the opportunity for all ADA holders to vote as to whether or not to continue the incentivized testnet running as a parallel testbed chain for improvements for Cardano in the future. So those are some key points to look out for in regards to the incentivized testnet. And lastly, I wanted to play some clips for you all from the most recent update from IOHK's Tim Harrison and Aparna Ju. They went into some more detail regarding parameters and some things to look forward to with the Shelley rollout plan. So that is what I have for you guys here. I really do appreciate every one of you. Thank you all so much for staying with me throughout this video today. If you guys did enjoy it, please be sure to drop a like for me. It definitely lets me know that you guys did find some value. And again, guys, if you want to stay updated with Cardano information as it happens, be sure to hit that subscribe button. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and take a look at that clip, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.
Kevin. So Lars, welcome.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Aparna. Thank you.
So Lars, we've literally just published a long-awaited blog post. I think it's probably fair to say that you've been working on with Kevin and also with Alex, who we'll get onto the show in just a moment. All about parameters. For those people who haven't actually seen the blog post yet, maybe just explain briefly what are parameters in the context of Cardano and why does this matter?
Well, we have quite a lot of them, 20, I think, or 19. And some of them are quite esoteric and probably only of concern for the cryptographers and the developers. I mean, it's things like that have to do with network latency and so on. But then, of course, there are at least 5 that are of much more general interest, I believe, because they directly affect how attractive, for example, staking on Cardano will be. That's like the number of stake pools that we expect and the monetary expansion parameters like that. So we worked very hard to find good initial proposed values for these parameters. For the others as well, of course, but the blog concentrates on those that are of general interest.
And this obviously isn't work that you've done in an ivory tower. This is something that I think we've been very much trying to talk to the community and get some feedback and feeding that into the process. So Alex, welcome. Alex, you've also been working with Kevin and Lars on trying to nail down some of these parameters. How have you found the process? Because it's been taken a little bit of work to get to this point, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been quite a bit of work to get to this point and try to sort of understand and learn from other chains that are obviously also incentivizing their operators. So we basically set out to achieve three potential goals. So the first one is to sort of get decentralization, and decentralization basically also means stability in our system. So we specifically picked a low value of K to start with, and then update that parameter along the way. So that's specifically intended to support both big pools and smaller pools in order to sort of get equal incentive. So that also comes back to the second part, which is around incentivizing the operators of our network. So what we wanted to make sure is that if you either have a smaller pool or you have a larger pool, you wouldn't get any disproportionate amount of the incentives. So that's why we select the monetary expansion the way that we did. And then I think the final one, which I think is an important one, if you're a stake pool operator, you own a business on Cardano. And if you own a business in Cardano, or actually in any circumstances, you don't want any sort of certain changes on your income. So that's the third one that we picked as an important goal, and the selection around all these parameters have been based on that. So yeah, that's how we got there.
And I think one of the most frequently talked about parameters, I guess, is that of pledge as well. Lars, do you want to give us a little bit of an update of where we've got to in the pledging amount?
Yes, so just as a very brief recap, we have this pledge mechanism that is to prevent Sybil attacks. So the Sybil attack problem is if some attacker sets up hundreds of pools and claims that he has very low costs, makes them very attractive, and then people would delegate to his pools and then he could basically take over the network. And in order to prevent that, we have this pledge influence factor, which means it's basically the pool owner's own stake that sits in the pool. So the idea is to put your money where your mouth is. If you run a pool, put your own money into it. And this is not a hard limit, so there is no minimal pledge, but there is this influence factor which determines how much for the pool reward calculation this pledge counts compared to the costs and the other parameters of the pool. And that is very difficult to actually come up with a value for it, because there are so many things to consider. I mean, you don't want to make it too high so that people can actually afford setting up a stake pool. But if you set it too low, then there's this risk of Sybil attacks. So Kevin ran, I think, millions of simulations with models. And of course, it's difficult to get realistic data, but we have, of course, the ITN and we have mathematical models. So we now settled on this number of 0.3, which hopefully is good enough for the beginning. And then, of course, as soon as the mainnet is running and we get feedback from the community, we can always adjust that when necessary.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make, that really this is kind of a starting point. Very much we do expect these to move, but we've hopefully landed at a space to start with that will get things off to a good start and give us that opportunity and that feedback. Now, Lars, when I was reading the piece, one of the phrases I saw mentioned was this concept of half-life. Now, to me, half-life is either something to do with Chernobyl or one of my favorite video games. What is it in the context of blockchain?
Well, for me as a mathematician, it's exactly the same as with with Chernobyl. I mean, they are in Chernobyl, the radioactive material deteriorates and radiates away, and in our case, the reserves radiate away. So we have this fixed amount of reserves, something like 14 billion ADA, and each epoch we take a certain percentage out of that to use it for rewards and for the treasury. So it's, I mean, mathematically, it's exactly the same as with radioactive material. So a certain percentage gets reduced every time, and because it's a percentage and not an absolute value, it gets more, I mean, less and less over time. I mean, 1% of 14 billion is less than 1% of 10 billion. So over time, this 1% gets smaller and smaller. And I mean, as with radioactive material, you can do the same calculation for the reserve. So you can ask yourself, with this percentage, how long will it take until half the reserve is left? And this, in our case, for this 0.22% per epoch, that turns out to be 4 point something years. So every 4 and a bit years, the remaining reserves will be half. So in 4 years, it's 7 billion. In another 4 years, it's 3.5 billion, and so on. So that's the half-life. And
Alex, before people have to start getting their calculators out and trying to manually work all this stuff out, I understand we're working on a staking calculator behind the scenes to give some indications to people. Where are we on? I think we're not far off from being able to push that out now, aren't we?
No. We're actually pretty close to get this out. So we have two intentions with the rewards calculator. So the first one is obviously so you can calculate how much rewards you can expect based on the current set parameters. But the other part of it is that you can also play with the parameters themselves and try to figure out what you would suggest to be the optimal scenario, the optimal situation.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Look, guys, thank you very much for joining us. As I say, the link to the blog post is there. We might have time to take a couple more questions at the end around this. We'll have a little bit of a look in a while, but I'll say farewell to you both for now, and we maybe see you a bit later. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay. And so what's coming up next that we need to know about?
Beyond the balance check and the rollout. Well, the main thing, of course, is going to be the hard fork, Tim, at the end of July. We will, before we do that, we have to end of life the existing relay nodes, the SL relay nodes, move over to the pure Byron Shelley node that will have the hard fork combinator built in. So this is the hybrid node that can transition from Byron into Shelley. So the SL nodes have to be switched off before that happens. Then that will allow us to go through the hard fork on July the 29th. And then on August the 4th, or August the 3rd, probably August the 4th, because it's Shelley's birthday, I understand, on August the 4th, we'll be going live with the first pools. You'll be able to delegate to the pools, and then during August, you'll be able to stake your ADA and earn the rewards. So about the middle of August, people will start to be seeing the first rewards from mainnet and be able to spend, of course, the rewards they've earned from the ITN in the meantime.
Great. Okay. Well, look, Kevin, thank you very much. But I think what's TLDR? How's it going? Are we looking good? Should we still be confident here?
Yeah. We're looking very good, Tim. It's everything is looking great. As the partner was saying, the tests are running smoothly. We're ironing out small glitches as we go along. Obviously, there's still a lot more to do, but a lot of things we want to do can happen once we've gone to the rollout. So there'll be various improvements. We'll be looking to to ramp up the performance so it's even better than it is at the moment. We will be looking to improve the CLI to bring in more features into the Explorer, more features into Daedalus. I'm sure some very exciting things are going to be happening. So it's all go, but it's absolutely fantastic, Tim.
Thanks, Kevin.
At the moment, but I don't think many of us are. But thank you, Kevin, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.